Hello everybody, my dear students for third prep. Today we are dealing with poetry, okay? Poetry composed. The poetry, the first poem here we have composed, okay? First, once we start about poetry or any poem, of course you should know the poet, okay? Who is the poet and what do you know about him? The poet here is William Wordsworth. What do you know about William Wordsworth? The most important thing you know about him that he was known as father of Romanticism. Romanticism. What is Romanticism? Romanticism is a movement in poetry. All poets related to Romanticism use elements of Romanticism in their writing. Elements of Romanticism? Yes. What do we mean by elements of Romanticism? Elements of Romanticism are the first one, love of nature. Number two, love of God. Number three, happiness and melancholy. Melancholy means sadness, okay? Happiness or sadness. Very good. Imagination and solitude. Solitude means being alone. But take care. It's not obligatory to use all the elements of Romanticism. We can find them all in one poem, or we can have only some of them, okay? Very good. Now, compose, the form. What's the form of this poem? It is a sonnet. It is a sonnet. A sonnet? What's a sonnet? A sonnet is a poem of 14 lines. A poem of 14 lines dealing with one idea or emotion. Only 14 lines? Yes, it should be 14 lines. A poem of 14 lines dealing with one idea, okay? We have two kinds of sonnets. We have the Italian sonnet and the Shakespearean sonnet. The Italian sonnet and the Shakespearean sonnet. As it is 14 lines, what's the difference between the Italian and the Shakespearean? Yes, let's have a look here. What the difference between Shakespearean and Italian sonnet? Here, the Italian sonnet consists of two parts, an octet and sestet. Only two parts, or you can say two stanzas. The first one, we call it an octet. The second one is a sestet. What's an octet? It's a stanza of 8 lines. So octet means 8 lines. And sestet, 6 lines. If you have 8 and 6, you'll have 14 lines. The 14 lines as it is a sonnet. But what about the Shakespearean one? The Shakespearean sonnet consists of 3 quatrains and heroic couplet. What does it mean, 3 quatrains? It means 3 fours, 4 and 4 and 4, 12. And a couplet 2, it equals 14. So as they are sonnets, it is 14 lines, the Italian or the Shakespearean. As we said here, the Italian sonnet, only 2 parts, octet and sestet. The Shakespearean, 3 quatrains and a heroic couplet. Have a look at our sonnet here today composed and tell me if it is Shakespearean or Italian. Have a look. It's only 2 parts, yes. The first part, octet, 8 lines. The second part, sestet, 6 lines. So, what sonnet is it? Yes, it is an Italian sonnet, octet and sestet, okay? Very good. Let's start here with the first stanza, or the first part of the octet, the 8 lines. Okay, of course, whenever we deal with any poem, you should be able to paraphrase it and picking out the figures of speech, okay? Let's have a look here. Earth has not anything to show more fair, it means more beautiful. Dull would he be of soul who could pass by, a sight so touching in its majesty. The city now doth like a garment wear, the beauty of the morning silent bear. Ships, towers, domes, theaters, and temples lie, open into the fields and to the sky, all bright and glittering in the smokeless air. Now let's start to paraphrase it. You remember what do I mean by paraphrasing? Just explaining. And when you explain, use easy words or simple words, okay? So here, the poet is standing on Westminster Bridge in London, and he's describing what he sees. Yes, it was early in the morning. He loved the scene so much, and he believes that anyone who passes by such a wonderful scene and not touched, he is a dull person. Okay? And here he describes the city of London early in the morning as a princess wearing a beautiful dress. Yes. Now he started telling us what he sees. And what he sees here is divided into two parts. It is divided into two parts. The first part is man-made. Ships, towers, domes, theaters, and temples. They are man-made. And then he refers to God-made nature objects such as fields and the sky and the smokeless air. Okay? Let's have a look at our paraphrase here for the first stanza. The poet is in London on the bridge of Westminster in the early hours of the morning, which inspired the poet with a religious feeling. Anyone who passes this scene and doesn't observe, he is a dull person, of course, or an unhappy person. He draws our attention to the beauty of the sleeping city. Of course, it is London in the early morning. He describes London as a princess wearing the beauty of the morning as her dress. He can see towers, churches, the rivers, houses, and of course, everybody was asleep. And it was so quiet and calm. The second thing you should consider here, the figures of speech. Of course, describing London as a princess wearing a beautiful dress. What kind of figures is it? Yes, it is personification. Yes, personification. We have personification and we have contrast. The personification, he describes London as a princess wearing a beautiful dress. You remember the contrast? Opposites, two opposites. Of course, dull and fair. Okay, let's have a look now at the sestet. Yes, the rhyme scheme, A, B, B, A, B, B, A. And take care the rhyme scheme is not of the figures of speech, okay? The second stanza, or the sestet, yes, of course, it consists of 6 lines. Here are the 6 lines. Yes, never did sun more beautifully steep in his first splendor, valley, rock, or hill. Never saw I, never felt a calm so deep. The river glides at his own will. Dear God, the very houses seem asleep, and all that mighty heart is lying still. The poet here has never seen the sun rise in this beautiful way, and everything looks bright and beautiful at the same time. They never felt as calm as he does now. And of course, he sees the river glides, means runs on his own will, and all the houses were asleep, and everything was asleep. And the heart here is the heart of the city. Of course, it is personification, because he describes the city of London as human who has a heart, and this heart is asleep. Let's have a look here at our paraphrasing. The poet has never seen the sun rise in such a beautiful way. Everything looks wonderful in the sunlight. The poet never felt as calm as he does now. The river flows calmly. Even the houses seem asleep. The heart of the city is also asleep. So of course here we have only personification for the figures of speech, okay? In line 12, the river is a person who has a will. Yes, and line 13, he makes the houses humans who also are asleep. Line 14, he makes London a human who has a heart. Okay, very good. Let's have a look at the commentary. The commentary we have is very important tips or notes on the whole poem here, or the whole sonnet. The rhyme scheme of the whole sonnet here, A, B, B, A, B, B, A, C, D, C, D, C, D. And take care, again, the rhyme scheme is not of the figures of speech, okay? A sonnet is a poem of 14 lines dealing with one idea or emotion of one person. And we mentioned this before, right? So the commentary here is very important as it gives you important tips or notes. In the octet, Wordsworth presents a picture of London in the early morning, while in the sestet he presents his response to that picture. We have reconciliation between man-made city, we mentioned it in the first, in the octet if you remember, man-made city and God-made nature, the two mixed together to make this beautiful scene of London. Okay? Now, if you have a look at the questions, you will find it so easy to answer it, especially after watching this video. Who is the poet and what do you know about him? You remember it? We mentioned at the beginning, William Wordsworth, and he's known as father of Romanticism, right? Where is the poet standing? Oh, he was standing on the bridge in London, Westminster Bridge in London. Of course, in the early morning. What is he describing? The scene of London in the early morning. What's the form of the poem? I think it's so easy for you to answer it, right? The form, of course, is a sonnet. What's a sonnet? A poem of 14 lines dealing with one idea or emotion. So, of course, here you can test yourself and try to answer these 7 questions. There are 7 questions, and you have all the answers in this video. Okay? Now we come to the end of our session. Thank you and goodbye.